Here we are again for another look at family history. This time we're going to show you a little bit about our family tree.
We may not have all the information that we need, but we'll show you what we do have.
And we'll start with me. I was born in Seattle in 1948. My parents were Robert Lawrence Kessler and Priscilla Ellen Albee. Now, the Kessler side of the family was Jewish and the Albee side was Protestant Christian, originally Quakers back in the 1800s. Being aware of this Jewish-Protestant interfaith marriage is important for a story I'll tell you later. My father's parents were Louis Kessler and Rose Verstandig. Lou and Rose were both from Jewish families, but one of their families were Orthodox Jews and the other was Reformed Jews. Therefore, their parents didn't approve of them getting married. So, they decided to elope and they traveled down to San Francisco to get married. Now, I was surprised when my grandfather told me the story in his later years that they took the ferry across the bay into San Francisco. They took the ferry. There was no Bay Bridge in the 1920s. It wasn't built until 1936. Even the Golden Gate Bridge wasn't built until 1933. Lou's parents were Herman and Mary. Herman was a prominent Jewish community leader in Seattle in the early 1900s. One of the things that he did was to help to establish Bikur Kollel, which was a Hebrew academy. His name is even carved into the cornerstone of their building. Herman also spent some time in Alaska during the gold rush that started in 1896. He sold supplies to miners there. Herman originally came from Austria to the United States in 1892. His wife Mary came to the United States from Russia in 1894. My grandmother Rose's parents were Leon and Celia Verstandig, who lived in Bellingham in the early 1900s. Bellingham is not a large city today, but back then it had a population of only about 20,000 people. Leon came to the U.S. from Austria in 1883, while Celia was born here in the U.S. in Cleveland, Ohio. Okay, it's time to look at my mother's branches of the tree. Priscilla was one of 5 children born to Newland Albee and Esther Marriage. I heard that my grandfather Newland traveled from Vermont to work in North Dakota one summer. And while he was there, he met my grandmother Esther. So they fell in love and then got married, and they honeymooned near Mount Rushmore in the Badlands area of South Dakota. At that time, there weren't any faces carved into Mount Rushmore. The faces weren't carved out until 1941. And here's another interesting look at historical events. My grandmother Esther was born before automobiles were invented. She told me that when she was a little girl, she saw Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. It always amazed me that she lived from the time of horse and buggies, then automobiles, then airplanes, and before her life was over, she watched a man land on the moon on TV. Newland was born to Ernest Albee and Fanny Chafee. Sorry, I couldn't find a photo of Ernest Albee. Esther was born to Sylvanus Marriage and Martha Fellows, who were both born in England but moved to the United States. Once again, I don't have a photo of Sylvanus Marriage. Now that I've introduced the Jewish side of the family and the Protestant side, I can tell you the funny story from my parents' wedding. Keeping with normal wedding traditions, the bride's family is responsible for hosting the wedding and the reception afterwards. So the Protestant Albees hosted the wedding and the reception. At the reception, they served ham to all the Jewish Kesslers. They did not understand that ham was a kosher no-no for Jewish people.
Now it's time for us to look at my side of the family tree. I was born in Lafayette, Indiana in 1949. My parents were Charles Edward Jackson and Florence Jane Post. They were married in Biloxi, Mississippi in the middle of World War II. My dad was stationed at an Air Force base there in Biloxi. My grandparents on my mother's side were Robert Post and Josephine Brewer. At this point, I've run out of photos of my ancestors. My grandparents on my father's side were Moss Jackson and Claudia Newton. And now I not only have run out of photos, I don't have any real information about the previous generation. We think on my mother's side of the family that they were from Germany. On my father's side, we were told that his mother, Claudia Newton, was a descendant of Sir Isaac Newton. I don't know much about the early Jacksons except that they were from Kentucky. Here's another Jackson from the neighboring state of Tennessee. Could they be related? Who knows? I don't know much about my great-grandfather Post, but I can assume he came from a long line of Posts. On the Brewer side, well, here are some Brewers from the past, but I'm not sure that they're related. Well, there's a look at our family tree.
Or at least as much of it as we could piece together. We can only look back about 200 years, but what we did find was
Our ancestors were Jewish, Quakers, and other forms of Christianity.
and they came here from Germany, Austria, Russia, and England. Well, that's it for now.
Bye.